Okay, Phyrro, let's do this. Right, you've opened up a big can of worms, but I do think that in some senses we're beginning to share some commonalities and share some common grounds. I certainly like our differences, but we can build on our commonalities and then get more and more detailed and refined as we go along. Perhaps that's the way that philosophical discourse should work. Anyway, to the point. When I said I'm more of a realist than you, or not more of a realist, I'm committed to realism, I didn't mean to insinuate that I was more of a materialist than you. What I simply said was, I think that the material world, the external world as it were, is the fundamental. That means I reduce perceptions as subjects having particular relations to this external world. So my level of explanation goes, external world comes first, and we talk about perceptions in terms of an experiential subject being himself consisted of physical objects relating to this external world somehow. You, on the other hand, think that perceptions are fundamental, so you account for the external world in terms of the agreeing upon of perceptions. So that makes you an idealist, and that makes me a realist. In particular, in the philosophy of perception, I am a naive realist. Secondly, it was also drawing upon the issue of realism about universals and nominalism. I think that there really are universals, universal properties, and I think that this goes beyond the mere particular physical instantiations. I assume this for some many theoretical reasons, but I'm not going to go into that. I just think that there are real property universal complexes, but that's a whole different issue. So anyway, that's what I meant by I'm committed to realism and you're not. So let's get on to this debate with the chicken before the egg, the pragmatics versus the analytics. Pragmatics here not used in the pragmatism philosophy sense, but merely used in the usefulness of philosophy. I'll agree with you, pragmatics comes first, but I think analytics are a damn useful tool to have, so I assume them. Now, like when I'm constructing for an ontology, for example, I'll use pragmatic tools left, right, and center. You could possibly argue that the law of non-contradiction was itself a pragmatic tool, because what usefulness is a theory that's A and not A. So you could say, oh, that's mere pragmatism that we're adopting. Maybe I'd agree with you. I'm slightly unsure on that one. However, I'll use other broader pragmatic tools, such as theoretical and ontological parsimony, in which I think a ontology serves better if it posits fewer ontological and metaphysical primitives as actually real. I think that theories that are simpler themselves are to be favoured over theories that are more complex. So again, it's kind of like an Occam's razor kind of thing. I will use the pragmatic tool of trying to maintain the intuitions that I'm committed to for my other particular theories. So, for example, one intuition that I have that I can't really justify too well is that truth supervenes on being. That is, for X to be true, there must exist something to make X true. So, in the philosophy of time, for example, as a side note, just to illustrate this point, the presentist says that facts about the past, he has to say that facts about the past are true, because they are. But he has to make something make those facts true, and I think the only thing that can make facts about the past true is if the past exists, because truth needs to supervene on being. So that's one intuition that I have in another area. But anywho, you're right, pragmatics do kind of come first, but I think the analytic method is one to be favoured for many pragmatic reasons. Okay, let me see, what else? Right, here's perhaps even though I didn't say that I was more materialist, nor did I insinuate it, maybe I am. Maybe I'm not. I think that the reason one could infer this is because I think an ontological primitive is something that cannot be reduced any further. So if your ontological primitive is perception or some kind of experiential state, that makes you an idealist. You don't think that perceptions, if they're ontological posits, they can't be reduced any further. Whereas I hold that perceptions can be reduced to the physical world. So the level of explanation runs in different ways. You want to explain the external world in terms of experience, like I said. I want to explain experience in terms of an external world. Now, your possible move out of here is to say that, well, we can account for the consistency of perceptions, and we can say that the external world constitutes these perceptions, but then you have explanatory redundancy. You're explaining the external world in terms of perceptions, and you're explaining perceptions in terms of the external world, and that to me seems a little bit circular if you were to make that move. So if you really are committed to perceptions as your ontological primitives, they are irreducible, just in the same way that when I say there's certain things of the external world, I'm going to say relational properties and instantiations of universals are what I'm committed to. Or maybe I'd say something like I'm committed to states of affairs, which is how the world is, and not facts or propositions or things like that. But anywho, that's I'm explaining it the other way to you, and if you want to say that you're a materialist, then you face the problem of explanatory redundancy. However, there's a very, very interesting article that I read, which will maybe allow us to frame our disagreement a little bit better. There's a guy called Kit Fine. I don't agree with him with everything, but he recently wrote a paper which was sort of how to frame the realism versus skepticism, realism versus anti-realism debate. And it's very interesting. It goes through all kinds of considerations and objections. And here we go. I'll just read you a paragraph from it, or 2 paragraphs. Realist metaphysics on this view has a single focus, the fundamentally real, and our interest in the other categories of reality will derive from their connection with this more fundamental category. It is this, the explanatory axis, as it were, upon which an account of the world will turn. For a given proposition may either be identical with the real itself, or be reducible to the unreal, or be neither identical to nor reducible to the real, the non-factual or irreal. And corresponding to each type of proposition will be a characteristic account of the proposition's metaphysical import, of how it relates to reality. It may either be real, in which case there is nothing further to be said since the proposition bears its import on its face, or it may be unreal, in which case its metaphysical import is given on its grounds, or it may be irreal, in which case the metaphysical import is given by those factual propositions that reflect its use. The aim of realist metaphysics is to render the world intelligible in terms of the distinction between what is and what is not real, and its task is complete once it becomes clear of what this apparent or non-real is to be rendered intelligible in terms of what is real. So I think you're saying that perceptions are real, and from Kit Fine's construal, which I believe is very, very good account of how we should carry this debate out, I think that you're saying perceptions are fundamentally real, and the external world is framed in terms of those. I'm saying reality, the external reality, is fundamentally real, and perceptions are explained in terms of those. So that's where I stand on it. I really encourage you to check out the Kit Fine article because it is brilliant. Okay, I'll speak to you soon. Peace.